The next morning, the antique shop's ancient bell clanged loudly as Daphne stepped through, pulling the hefty, ornate mirror with her. Today, she brought the mirror to work to see if the different surroundings would enlighten her to its secret. She placed it in a corner of her office away from crimping customers where she could hopefully study it in peace. It was a quiet morning, with just a few regulars stopping by here and there. Not until early afternoon did the door to the store open, and a well-dressed gentleman, tall, stiff, with black eyes and hair, entered the room. He was the kind of man who could have whatever he wanted without much fuss. "Good afternoon," Daphne greeted him. "Is there anything specific you're looking for today?" The man's eyes took in the shop, then Daphne.
Maybe.
He said. His voice was like glass.
My name's Simon Blackwood. I'm looking for something, shall we say, a little out of the ordinary. I was hoping you could help.
Daphne's hackles went up at something in Simon's voice. "I'd be happy to help if I can, Mr. Blackwood," she began. "What, kind of thing?" Simon stepped closer, lowering his voice.
I've heard whispers of a mirror. Victorian in origin, with some rather unusual properties. Word has it that it recently came into the possession of someone in this area. I don't suppose you've come across anything like that in your dealings.
Daphne's pulse quickened, but she kept her face impassive as she replied, "I'm sorry, I haven't come across anything like that before." With a lie like glue, she said, "Mirrors are a common feature of what I do. Nothing out of the ordinary, all just looking glass and gilded frames." Simon's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly.
Is that so?
He said.
Very well. Should you come upon such a thing, do let me know, won't you? Money is, of course, no object for the right piece.
He handed her a card.
Don't hesitate to phone if anything comes up, won't you? Day or night.
As Simon left the shop, Daphne let out a shaky breath. She'd known, instinctively, that she couldn't tell this stranger about the mirror. But his interest only confirmed her growing suspicion that the artifact was far more significant than she'd initially realized with her gaze drifting to her office where the mirror waited. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Gary Carlisle's living room wall clock chimed 4 p.m. when the doorbell rang. Surprised, because he wasn't expecting anyone, he went over to answer it. A leathery old man, bones and loose dead skin under a dirty brown horizon-striped shirt, balanced above the ground by a bowed, gnarled cane that looked as if it could barely support him, thin white furry eyebrows moving sharply beneath white furry hair.
"Can I help you?"
Gary asked, a note of caution in his voice. He nodded.
Well, if you're Gary Carlisle, then yes, I'd say you probably can. My name's Edward Gossage. I've flown all the way from Hartford to talk with you about a matter of importance.
For a moment, Gary hesitated. Then, typically, his basic human decency asserted itself.
"Okay, Mr. Gossage, come on in, come out of the rain, have some tea?"
Mr. Gossage sat in the lounge, fidgeting.
Mind if I sit down, Mr. Carlisle? I know this may seem strange, but I assure you what I have to say is of utmost importance. It concerns your wife, Daphne, and an item she recently inherited.
Gary's brow furrowed.
"You mean the mirror? What about it?"
Mr. Gossage had leaned closer, as if to tell a dark secret.
That mirror is not just an antique, it is dangerous. The most dangerous thing your wife might have brought into your house.
For the next hour, Gossage spun a story too fantastic to believe. The mirror was made centuries past, he said, by a powerful sorcerer who wanted to capture an evil demon, known as the Shadow Weaver. He explained how the mirror showed glimpses of possible futures, using them to lure its victims.
With these visions, the Shadow Weaver tricks people into touching the mirror. When they do, they exchange places with the being. The person is trapped in the mirror. The Shadow Weaver is then released into our world, wreaking havoc for 100 years before it's forced back into the mirror and can start again. The last such instance happened around the year 1910, when an unsuspecting newspaper editor was promised limitless power, influence, and prestige, which unleashed the Shadow Weaver onto our world.
Mr. Gossage's hands were shaking, as he explained that all the chaos, death, and destruction during the 20th century was caused by the Shadow Weaver.
Weltmannschaufspotter sein. Und zweitens, Sie wollten Herr... Die Heil! Die Heil! Die Heil! That both the Catholic and Protestant churches must vanish from the life of our people.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Mao ranks as one of the great mass murderers of the 20th century.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time. I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary, rational end of rational men.
I have today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division and certain other forces which will raise our fighting strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately. Additional forces will be needed later, and they will be sent as requested.
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
It now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone. They're all gone. They're all gone.
We think that when we suffer a defeat, that all is ended. We think, as TR said, that the light had left his life forever. Not true. It's only a beginning, always. The young must know it. The old must know it. It must always sustain us, because the greatness comes not when things go always good for you, but the greatness comes and you're really tested when you take some knocks, some disappointments, when sadness comes. And so I say to you on this occasion, we leave, always give your best, never get discouraged, never be petty. Always remember, others may hate you, but those who hate you don't win unless you hate them. And then you destroy yourself.
From ABC in New York, this is World News Tonight, Sunday, with Sam Donaldson.
Good evening. The U.S. Embassy in Tehran has been invaded and occupied by Iranian students. The Americans inside have been taken prisoner. Some reports say as many as 90 Americans may be involved. Others say as few as 35.
Coming out now. We just have to watch. I don't know whether we can hear this or not. There's shots. God.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Control program.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
Oh my God. Jimmy, the second tower just went.
Gary listened, his anxious disbelief turning to dread. It all sounded impossible, and yet it would explain the change he'd noticed in Daphne lately, her distraction and sleepless nights.
Why are you telling me this? Why not go directly to Daphne?
A wave of melancholy crossed Mr. Gossage's face.
I've warned Daphne's great-aunt Agatha for years. She wouldn't listen. Not unless you count that one piece of advice she took to heart. She never went anywhere near the mirror. She didn't want to touch it either, but she thought she could turn its power for the good. That's why she never destroyed it. In the end, the mirror almost destroyed her. I fear poor Daphne is being drawn under the spell too. That's why I've come to you, Mr. Carlisle. You must talk your wife into destroying the mirror before it's too late.
Gary combed his fingers through his hair in shock.
Mr. Gossage, I don't know how I can possibly explain all this to Daphne without sounding crazy.
You must.
Mr. Gossage insisted.
Do whatever it takes. The stakes are too high, and there's more. A man named Simon Blackwood is searching for the mirror. He's a collector of dark artifacts, always seeking more power. If he gets his hands on it, the consequences could be catastrophic.
As if on cue, Gary's phone buzzed with a text from Daphne. A strange man came to the shop asking about an unusual mirror. Call you later with details. Gary's blood ran cold. He showed the message to Mr. Gossage, whose face paled.
It's already beginning,
the old man whispered.
You must act quickly, Mr. Carlisle. Protect your wife, destroy the mirror, and whatever you do, don't let anyone touch its glass. The fate of more than just your own souls may depend on it.
As Mr. Gossage prepared to leave, he gripped Gary's arm with surprising strength. In an urgent voice, he said,
Remember, the mirror is the true enemy. Don't let its visions fool you or your wife.
The moment Mr. Gossage's car disappeared down the street, Gary rushed to his phone. He dialed Daphne's number, his heart pounding as it rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail.
Damn it,
Honey muttered, ending the call without leaving a message. He felt that there was something wrong. Without pausing, Gary grabbed his keys and headed towards the door. Daphne had to be warned before it was too late. The race to save Daphne, and perhaps the world, had begun.